What is Conference of Parties? The 29th Conference of Parties is a paramount annual meeting of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, where world leaders, negotiators, and stakeholders group together to discuss and devise strategies to combat climate change on a global scale. So, COP meetings are crucial platforms for nations to negotiate binding agreements aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emissions, adapting to climate impacts, and enhancing their commitment to a sustainable future. So, let's go with a quick overview. So, what is COP29? It is an annual global climate summit where countries come together to discuss and agree on actions to address climate change. So, COP29 is a part of long-standing international framework designed to address climate change, a phenomenon that threatens ecosystems, economies, and societies across the world. Following a series of impactful COP gatherings, including the landmark COP21 in Paris, the focus has shifted toward implementing and enhancing the commitments made in previous conferences. So in Baku, Azerbaijan, COP29 aims to build on a previous progress while addressing urgent global climate change challenges. So the conference provided a stage for highlighting the relationship between development, inequality, and emissions, emphasizing the need for integrated approaches to sustainable development. So the concept of tipping points, one of the critical discussions at COP29 will revolve around the concept of tipping points. So in environmental science, a tipping point refers to a threshold beyond which a small change can lead to catastrophic effects on climate system. So tipping points represent crucial moments when specific environmental changes become irreversible, causing cascading effects. So example includes the melting of polar ice sheets, the dieback of Amazon rainforest, and the release of methane from permafrost. So during COP29, scientists and policymakers underscored the urgency of understanding and addressing these tipping points. The idea is that crossing these thresholds would result in feedback loops that escalate the climate crisis beyond our control. Therefore, avoiding tipping points is deemed essential for maintaining a stable climate and minimizing adverse effects on ecosystem and human societies. So the Baku conference will generate a significant interest dialogue that focus on several themes like participating nations will reinforce their commitments to achieve net zero emissions by specified deadlines. Emerging economies which face unique challenges sought additional support and capacity building measures from wealthier nations to transition effectively. So the climate finance, a discussion on financial mechanisms will highlight the importance of funding for climate mitigation and adaptation, particularly in developing nations. So commitments will be made to enhance climate finance with calls for transparency and accountability. So we have seen that tipping points are critical thresholds in its climate system, beyond which changes may become irreversible. So like melting of Arctic ice cap and collapse of Amazon rainforest, these tipping points could lead to catastrophic consequences like rising sea levels, extreme weather events, and biodiversity loss. So let's go for another topic, like what is carbon tax? So carbon tax is a fee imposed on burning of carbon-based fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas. The goal is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by making fossil fuels more expensive, thereby incentivizing the use of cleaner energy sources. So, who is the current greatest carbon emitter? It can be maybe China. Yes, of course, maybe it might be Southeast Asian countries along with European countries as well. So the several countries have implemented measures to reduce emissions, such as investing in renewable energy, improving energy efficiency, and promoting electric vehicles. So the climate justice must benefit the climate action that must be distributed fairly, particularly between developed and developing countries. So one of the key issues at COP29 is the goal of mobilizing $100 billion per year in climate finance from developed to developing countries. This funding is crucial for helping developing nations adapt to climate change and transition to low carbon economies. So, India has been an active participant in COP29, emphasizing the need for climate justice and equitable burden sharing. India has also called for increased climate finance and technology transfer to support its ambitious climate goals. So, we must focus on how the environmental change might become irreversible, would create a dangerous effect. And for the first time, COP29 featured a dedicated platform for youth representatives and indigenous communities amplify their voice on climate issues. So this shift highlights a growing recognition that frontline communities are pivotal in climate action efforts. So the new scientific reports, the conference incorporated findings from recent scientific reports on climate impacts and projections, so reinforcing the need for immediate action to prevent the catastrophic climate outcomes must be focused. So as the world reflects on the outcomes of COP29, the stakes have never been higher. Addressing climate change is no longer a future consideration, it has become an urgent imperative for survival. Nations must work collectively to implement the commitments made in Baku while keeping an eye on imminent tipping points that require global attention and action. As COP30 will approach in future, the ongoing negotiation and dialogues initiated at COP29 will lay the groundwork for future climate cooperatives, a shared responsibility that calls for innovation, accountability and collaboration across borders. The promise of sustainable future hinges on how effectively and swiftly the global community can address the challenges posed by climate change.